Hello, my name is David Hall, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to Track 1 within the IoT Days Spring Embedded IoT event presented by the IMC. The topic for this track is IoT Modem Reference Design, or IoT SoC modules, modem for embedded designers. You can see the full schedule in the handouts section of your interface. I will introduce the moderator for the session in just a moment, but before we begin, we want to cover a few housekeeping items. The webcast is being streamed through your computer, so there is no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or your headset are turned on and the volume is up so that you can hear the presenters. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available later today and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A box on the right side of the screen. The presenters may answer questions at the end of each session, but feel free to ask questions at any time during the presentation. Any unanswered questions may be responded to offline after the event. Please also be sure to check out the handouts that our presenters will provide through the webcast. Now, I'd also like to say a word about the organization producing this event, the IoT M2M Council, or IMC. Our group is the largest trade associate organization dedicated to the IoT sector, with 28,000 rank and file members. We have essentially two levels of membership at the IMC: adopter members, who are individual product makers, designers, enterprise users, and apps developers that deploy IoT solutions; and sustaining members, which are roughly 35 companies that provide IoT solutions in the form of connectivity, hardware, and software. IMC adopters qualify to join our group as IoT buyers. They join to get the best IoT content there is, including our extensive library of hundreds of use cases, white papers, news items, blogs, and research, as well as advance notice of our events like this one. If you qualify as an IoT buyer, I suggest you check out our website where you can apply for membership. IMC sustaining members are technology companies that join our group to get exclusive access to 28,000 adopter members for purposes of thought leadership, lead generation, promotion, and research. Our sustainers include some of the very largest companies providing IoT solutions, but also smaller, equally nimble technology providers. As a group, they form our IMC Board of Governors and represent the most influential group of IoT leaders there is. If you have an interest in joining this group, please reach out to us on our website. We look at the IMC as an industry accelerator. Our mission is to bring adopters and solution providers together to deploy IoT technology for the public good. And we see today's session as exactly in keeping with this mission. With that, I'd like to introduce our panel moderator, Fred Jens, the CEO and founder of IoT Launch. Fred, welcome and good morning. Oh, hold on.
Good morning, David. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the quick overview of the value that IMC brings to the marketplace. So as Dave said, my name is Fred Jens. I have a very long history in the IoT domain, and am very, very happy to be really having two roles today. My first role with IMC is I'm the chair of the events committee. So as we look forward to some of our next face-to-face events like the Embedded World in Nuremberg, I am very excited to be also hosting this panel and moderating this panel with the embedded designers in mind. So as you mentioned, this is about chip on board versus the IoT modules on board when people are designing for the embedded space or for end products. And I'm very, very pleased to have two experts in the field, one representing kind of the chip on board or the chip space and in Sony, and that's Dean Fellman. And I'll let him introduce himself in a moment. And then we also have Telit Cinterion, who's the leader in creating high value SoC modules that can be placed onto boards. As we know, there's hardly any product being designed today that's not thinking about connectivity. So in the last 10 years, the idea of IoT connected devices has moved from, early adopters to very, very mainstream. And now as we look at almost every product line going forward, there's some methodology for connecting that into the internet to enrich a user experience, collect incremental data, etc. So there's a lot more focus on this, and there's a lot more designers that are going to be asking this question of themselves. Do I choose to put chip on board, or do I choose to try to go potentially an easier route and use a module that is already a lot of pre-engineering done on that? So to kick this off, I'd really like to have Dima start by introducing Sony and what you do and a little bit about yourself, and then we'll pivot and we'll go immediately to Marco to introduce Telit. Dima, you're maybe on mute. I apologize.
Oh. I think it's better now. So Fred, thank you very much for the introduction. And as Fred said, I'm coming from Sony, and Sony is well known for many of the absolutely awesome electronic products. As an organization, we are doing TV sets, PlayStation, cameras. Sony is also doing music and films, and it's a huge organization. I think one part which is probably less known for Sony is semiconductor, and this is a part of a business I'm coming from. For Sony, semiconductor is over $10 billion business, and it's quite one of the biggest semiconductor companies globally. Personally, I'm coming. Our company is named Sony Semi Israel. We are coming through the acquisition of Altera Semiconductor, and being a part of the Japanese companies, we got an opportunity to keep the Altera brand, which is well known in our field. And our chips today are powering connectivity and connecting multiple applications in asset tracking, mobile health, a smart meter, and smart city and wearable space. And I think we are very well known in our industry for very low power consumption devices. And a word about myself, I'm Dima Feldman, as Fred introduced me. I'm responsible for the product management and marketing of Sony cellular chipset. And if somebody has questions, I could be reached at dima.feldman@sony.com.
Excellent. Thank you, Dima. So moving right on to Telit Cinterion, Marco, take it away and tell us a little bit about what's happening at Telit, Cinterion, and yourself.
Hello, Fred. Hello, Dima. Hello, everyone. Of course, also on my side, thanks for the introduction, and thanks IMC for having me in this panel. My name is Marco Argenton. I'm based in Italy, and I'm also since quite a long time in this industry, since more than a decade. I joined the company when it was just Telit. Now you might know that we are a much bigger company. We are Telit Cinterion, and when I joined, we were more than 10 years ago just a module maker. And this is one of the topics we will discuss today. Now we are really defining ourselves as the end-to-end IoT solution enabler, because it's not just a matter of providing hardware modules, but also we have in our portfolio connectivity services and software value-added services with our own cloud and device management offering. On top of that, we are also able to provide custom solutions, helping our customers and partners to really make their IoT ideas a reality, and helping them through the integration from A to Z. Our headquarters is now in the US. We have more than 1,000 people spread all over the world. I'm based in Italy, and really we are now one of the leaders in this industry, definitely the Western leader in this field. And just to show you a little bit more in details, with a little bit more of granularity, how these four elements that I presented come together, I have this other slide that really tells you about what we like to call it the IoT journey. So our mission is really to, with our products, to connect the devices at the edge that you see on the left-hand side with the cloud of the enterprises on the right-hand side. And in order to do that, of course, we need a device, we need a module. And by the way, this is my area of expertise. I run product management for the modules in the company. The modules are not just hardware. There is a lot of firmware and high value added capabilities and features inside them. But then, of course, to make the devices of our partners connected, we need also connectivity. And this is something we can provide. And as I said before, device management with a lot of different ingredients that are part of it, and the glue that is keeping all these elements together is really what we call IoT solutions. That is our ability really to customize and guide our partners in the integration of their connected device. So really, in a nutshell, in 1 minute, this is an overview of the company for those that don't know it already. And as I said, my name is Marco Argenton. These are my contacts. And if you have any questions also after this panel, feel free to reach out and I will provide all the information you might need. Thanks.
Well, very good. We clearly have the right two gentlemen on the call to discuss the topic at hand today, and I appreciate your time. So I'm going to flip this over so that we're all on camera. I want to encourage the participants in the audience to ask questions inside of the webinar tool, and we'll try to get to those as we can. But I'm going to start off by asking kind of a simple question. When a new participant or even an experienced participant in the IoT engineering side of the business, making products for embedded boards, looks at the alternatives between putting chip on board or using a more design-rich module like Marco just described, clearly they're going to get the pressures of economics. Everybody thinks chip on board is going to be cheaper. That's probably not a reality when we look at the total costs, and there's many other factors that are going to go into this. But to kind of protect the naive early adopter, coming in and playing with IoT, thinking that this might be an easy path, and they bump into the Sony Altair website and say, "Hey, this is the answer for me." What kind of questions you ask that incoming customer, Dima?
I think, Fred, it's a great question, and with the time, I would say we get less and less of these kind of inquiries. I think the first question I would ask is how experienced you are with cellular products. And very often, people who had experience will start typically with module makers and then consider what to do in the future. The question of economics often starts with smaller companies that have a wonderful idea and they just don't know yet the complexity of the cellular space. They would think that we will come to the technology vendor, ask for a chip, like it would be a Wi-Fi chip, or maybe even simpler device, and build a solution. And I would start actually with the understanding the experience.
Okay. Well, there's a lot more that goes into successfully completing a licensed cellular design on board than putting a few chips down. Maybe Marco, you could explain what that long list of other things would be, because you guys are certainly expert in that space.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, I agree with what Dima said. It's a matter of experience because the matter is complex, and of course, the first, as you said, Fred, the first two variables in the equations. In the equation are cost, investment, and it's a compared, calculated in the prospect of how many devices you are planning to deploy. But this is not enough. There are indeed other variables in the equation, because if you just do the math, okay, fine, we can be not only a supplier of modules, but we can also be a trusted advisor and explain that according to our calculation, I mean, yes, chip down design is cheaper, no question about it, if you consider the cost of the single unit. But then in order to amortize the investment, you would have to deploy probably millions of units, right? But then what else is important? The time to market that you have to in front of you in your plans for your project, for your ideas, and this is one aspect. And why time to market is relevant, because if you are not expert of the technology, and that's why Dima has this as one of their first question. It means that you have to deal with, first of all, the know-how in the RF technology. So it's not just a matter of putting few components following a reference design together on a PCB. It's a matter of making a design that, from a hardware perspective, is compliant to the standards, and this is not trivial. Then it's not only hardware. You have to develop a lot of firmware on top of the protocol stack that is coming with the chips that a company like Sony is providing, and then it's also a matter of supporting the product once in the field. I mean, even assuming that you have all the know-how to go to market, but then, in particular in our industry, the devices are supposed to stay in the field for years. And when I say in the field, I mean all over the world, in different networks, according to the requirement and the specifications of different networks that may change over time, etc., etc. So there are a lot of elements that have to be taken into account when it comes to calculating the total cost of ownership of a project in IoT, and the investment that you have to incur across the life cycle of the device. It's not the money that you have to spend from day one to the mass production, is the overall journey that you have to take care about. So, this, I just spoke for a few minutes, but I mentioned few things. But I mean, we could really spend hours discussing about the complexity behind a cellular technology. Then maybe later we can discuss about other technologies as well. But since we started with cellular, really these are the first elements that comes to my mind.
Right. Well, very good. And I think just the fact that you spent a few minutes hitting 4 or 5 topics, and we could go for hours, is a good indicator the level of complexity. And I know that, in the rearview mirror, if we look at, kind of the feedback of the IoT industry, we've always been, kind of hampered by the idea that there's so many elements in the ecosystem to make a good IoT solution work, right? There's the hardware, there's the connectivity, there's the cloud and the app services, and everything's got to be synchronized. And, the value chain is sometimes complex. But, frequently in that discussion, they just say the hardware. But when we're looking at the hardware, boy, is there a lot of complexity to make the hardware work. You mentioned RF, antenna technologies, FODA and, over-the-air updates to make sure that the device has a substantial product life cycle and can adhere to the carrier's requirements, internationally. Can you talk a little bit, Marco, maybe about the the complexities of the software elements that you put in those SoCs, prior to releasing them to the market, and the work that a designer doesn't really need to accomplish. They need to understand, but they don't need to do.
Yes, indeed. Even in the slide that I presented, the first icon on the left says hardware modules, but I'm sure that many of my colleagues would be upset with the marketing definition, because in reality, inside those modules, there is, as I said before, a lot of firmware and software. But for marketing reasons, we also have to differentiate what is the firmware in the module from what is our offering in terms of software on the cloud and all the rest. So I take the opportunity to apologize for those that do not feel represented in that icon. But yes, when before I was talking about the complexity, for example, of the hardware design to be compliant to the standards, this is just a part of the story, because yes, you have to go through regulatory certifications and industry standards. So, for example, just to mention the first and maybe obvious element, your final device has to be compliant in terms of RF, spurious emissions, and all this kind of stuff. So, from that perspective, hardware engineers have to know what they're doing when matching the antenna, when finding the right components for the power supply, and considering other technologies that may be around the device that could interfere, and so on. But there is another element when it comes to certification that is strictly related to firmware and software. Because I said before that depending on the region where you have to deploy, you have to comply also with the specification of the mobile network operators, for example. And this means that you have to implement specific features and specific logic to behave in a certain way, depending if you are in US with a certain carrier, or if you are in Europe with another one, or in Asia Pacific, and the list is really long. So the ability of our people is really to combine all those elements together in the same firmware that is running in the module, because we make products that are suitable for the worldwide deployments. Then maybe there is a customer that is not really interested and they have to deploy only in one country, and maybe it's easier. But I really invite everybody to think 360 degrees. And this is one element about the firmware. But then there are other elements that are about the functionalities. And for example, when before I was mentioning life cycle management and device management, this means that there are other peculiar ingredients that you have to consider, because once your device is deployed, you have to make sure that your device is reachable, that you can operate from remote, that you can upgrade the firmware. So you have to have your infrastructure, your backend, in order to be able to do that. If you have to transfer data to the cloud, it can be our cloud or third-party clouds, of course, it doesn't matter, but you have to have in your software the right agents and connectors, if I may say. So really, when it comes to firmware and software, beyond the initial, let's say, obstacle of the hardware compliance, really we are talking about months of expertise that you have to put. And this is something that either you have it, or if you don't have it, it takes some time to build the expertise. And I'm sure that also in Dima's team, there are not people that came yesterday in the company, right? And started to do chip and protocol stack. It's an expertise that is accumulated over time, and yeah.
So very good. So Dima, let's pivot. Let's take that and pivot to you. So it's pretty clear that most of your customers are either larger, mature companies that are building devices and product, or they are the module makers themselves are your customers. Clearly, there's a lot of synergies here between the two of you. When you're in the category of skills, time, resources, and volumes and economics that you do believe that as a client, I'm going to be a chip on board client for Sony. What are some of the advantages of working directly with the chip makers at that time?
I think when we look, I'll answer the question in a second. When I look at the IoT space today, which is very much different from a mobile phone space, in the IoT space today, vast majority of our customers are companies like Telit, who are the module makers. Only fraction of our business goes to people who are doing chip on board. And as I mentioned before, most of them are experienced, and they always start with modules, and maybe down the road they make a decision to redesign and do chip on board. They would be usually very big large customers, and as Marco said earlier, most of them would deploy in a single geography or with a single carrier, because this is where economical equation makes more sense. One point where they would benefit beyond the cost, and I think cost is only one factor, and if you look the total cost of ownership, I fully agree with Marco. Only few people can justify their own chip on board solution. So only those guys maybe will benefit from cost and maybe not. One direction where they could benefit the most, I think, is the direct access to the modem development team, where they can have a better impact on the specific features they want to develop, or very rarely even proprietary features, and having an influence on the roadmap. If they want to steer or implement a very new feature introduced by a carrier, this is a better way for them to do so. I think in terms of support, some of them think that we could provide a better support. I don't know if it's true or not. For sure, we have as a company very deep understanding of the modem and how physical layer works and how the protocol stack works. However, if customers get to ask this kind of question, somebody's not doing the right job. Our customers should not be expert in cellular space. They should be experts in asset tracking, in smart cities and utilities. So I think this is where, but still, some of our great customers have chip on board, and they do enjoy direct access to the technology.
And if I may jump in, you said something that for sure is true, and I mean for those big accounts, customers of you that have direct access to you and to the chip resources and protocol, yeah, definitely true. But I also would like to emphasize that we are here as let's say a middle layer in between the chip maker and an integrator, also to fill this gap, in the sense that I mean, I know Dima since some time already, and it's not a secret that we are partnering with Sony for some of our products, and it is us to have access to them when it is relevant. I mean, yes, we do product for our roadmap that are, let's say, general purpose devices with a certain set of features. But then if a big account is coming to us with a specific requirement, then it's our responsibility and privilege also to talk directly to the chip maker and see what we can do to fulfill the demand of the customer. So don't worry. I mean, if you work with a module maker, it doesn't mean that you will never have access to the resources. Yet it's not the same, but for sure you have a preferred channel when it comes to specific need and requirements.
And maybe just to add, sometimes you also do need a three-way or two-way discussions where really complicated things need to be solved. This is
Yes.
rarely happens, but it's a possibility as well.
Yeah, indeed. And when it comes to support, I also wanted to comment on something you said. For sure, doing a silicon is probably even more complex than doing a module, because on our side we are also an integrator of components. But then it's a matter of know-how and scale. I mean, you need X number of engineers to develop the protocol stack and the silicon, while we use maybe a similar amount of engineers to provide support all over the world when it comes to carrier certification of the devices, when it comes to bug fixing, when it comes to application engineering support. Because as Dima said, they do the silicon, but then we create a module that can have a specific set of functionality that is more tailored for asset tracking, or another device that is more suitable for smart metering. And the expertise on the different verticals is on us because of the history that we have in the market. So we are, with our people also on the technical support, already familiar with some of their functionalities, some of the logic that they implement in their host processor. And this, in my opinion, is really meant to make life of our partners easier. It's also true that with the latest innovation, also on the silicon side, some of those elements are coming together. There are new solutions where the chipset is already tailored for IoT. I would like to remind everybody that when I started, the first 3G products or even 4G modules were just a copy-paste of silicons that were used in mobile phones. There was no real fine-tuning for IoT. That at that time was machine to machine. So yes, now there is a higher attention. Dima before mentioned power consumption, just to mention one. Some algorithms, some features, some functionalities that are more tailored for industrial applications rather than consumer applications. So for sure, the know-how of the verticals is increasing also on the chip makers. But really, we are the enabler, as I said in my introduction, to really put those things together and facilitate the adoption of a connected device, if I can say.
Very good. Well, to kind of to start bringing this discussion a little bit more to home for some folks that still might be listening and wondering, which side of the fence do I fall on? And it sounds like we're making a pretty good argument to certainly start with modules. If you've never done this before, don't even consider giving Dima a call. Save everybody some time and energy. But time to market is critical. Everybody, the world is moving faster and faster every day, and not being ready with your idea is key. To put this into kind of a reality check for people, when you release first silicon, Dima, what is the time before a module is released or potentially a product from a direct customer would be released? What do you see as that, that window, measured in months or years or however you best see to measure it?
I think it's a good question. And
Don't put me in trouble, Dima. Don't say 2 weeks.
I was about to say a year, sometimes less. I think it takes. I think we are doing it in a gradual way. That we develop a silicon, we provide very early samples to to companies like Telit to do early integration, give us a feedback, start module and hardware design. So they can be ready with their products slightly after we complete our products, and we are developing some features also per Telit's request. But I think this process could probably be maybe a year, maybe less, depending when we start and how aggressive we want to be with the time to market. And then also with the customer, there could be some overlap in time if they start with a final sample or production sample or engineering samples. In the utility space, it takes easily 18 to 24 months to build a product and qualify product. In some quicker market like asset tracking, it could be 6 to 12 months. So I would say the fastest between a silicon done to device is maybe 1 year. And for more like smart city devices, the devices that have to be in field for 10 years, it's probably closer to 2 years. Make sense, Marco?
Yes, it makes sense.
I didn't put you in any troubles.
No, not for now. Well, I don't know, Freddy, if you were going to ask the same question to me as well, but since I'm talking, I can take it. Internally, when we have our periodic meeting with also the senior management, and we have to decide for a new product, I'm always used to say that for a ground-up design from scratch, I mean, from the specification that a company like Sony or others can give us on a PDF, from that moment to mass production, it's more or less give and take always the same period of that you need to give birth to a baby, right? This this is my personal, let's say, rule of thumb. 1 quarter for the first EVT samples, another quarter for the TVT samples. In the meantime, we do all the certifications and the field trial, and then we are ready with a full certified product. Then, of course, this is true if we are talking about a complex product with an RF front end that is covering global bands for all over the world, all the regions, with all the functionalities and all the feature set. If we are talking about a variant of an existing platform, for sure we can make it more aggressive. But then, yes, I do confirm that when it comes to the final application, it really depends on the type of application of our partners, because if it is a simple tracker or let's say a tag, maybe it's a matter of a few months if it does not require a lot of approvals. But if it is a smart meter, for example, I mean, the development cycle and the validation, even more important, of the solution is really longer, in the range of a couple of years before deploying millions of devices in that case across the life cycle. And if you download from the end out a white paper, a web page that we have on our portal, you can find also a graph, a chart where we are somehow trying to put this into perspective. I mean, if you have a time to market that goes from, let's say, 3 to 18 months, let's go for a module. And with a certain investment, of course. If you are one of those few lucky guys that can afford a much higher investment, and you can plan way in advance your deployments, and you have in front of you from 15 to 30 months, then and if you plan to install millions of devices, well, maybe you can enter in the adventure. You can start the adventure of a chip down design. But
right,
as Dimas said,
yeah, Marco, would it be fair to say that module design saves somewhere around 9 months in time to market, which is, in my view, like 4 months for a hardware and another at least for a single carrier certification?
Yeah. I think I mean if you make the math on the numbers I just gave, and you make the difference between what I said for chip down minus what it takes for module, you have the saving. Yes.
So that matters. A year not in market matters. So if I'm looking at going from module to final product, typically there it's about the same baby sometimes, right? It might be 6 to 9 months depending on how fast you can go and where you're going to go. So what it sounds like is working with a module company, you're going to save the hardest work of those first 9 months. That's going to be work that for sure your module partner DEMA can kind of take away in terms of the complexity to an end customer. And I think we've always focused on IoT. The challenge has always been, what's the use case? What's the ROI? What's the value proposition of the end solution? So getting companies that make products and services to think more about how they're applied in the market and put their energies there to make adoption quicker is probably a better spend than investing in the 9 months up front that the module guys take away that complexity and allow them to really go quicker. So I think that was really a good kind of differentiator, because time is money, and you can't just make it happen. You can't have a baby in a day. You can't make a module in less than 9 months, as you say, and then you've got more work to do. The one thing I just want to reference, I think, and ask both of you, when I look at other technologies, Wi-Fi or unlicensed spectrum technologies, are they setting a different pace? And maybe somebody who's working in the Wi-Fi world and wants to go to cellular, he might think it's easier because he might have accomplished it on the Wi-Fi space. Can we talk about the differentiation between cellular and non-cellular?
Yeah, I can take this first, Fred, because so far, yes, we did talk about cellular technologies that was and still is our main DNA, but in our portfolio, we have also Wi-Fi and GNSS devices, for example. So I have no problem to admit that the barriers to entry are much lower. I mean, it's not as difficult as it is in cellular to design a GNSS receiver, and by the way, Sony is also doing that. It's the bill of material is simple. The regulations are simpler. You are receiving, for example, you are not transmitting. That is already an easier stuff. But I would say that is not just a matter of hardware, as I said before. Yes, it's easier. Sometimes we have partners that are taking from us the cellular module and they are putting a chip outside the module in their board for their Wi-Fi transceiver or for their location capabilities. But again, the IoT journey, as I said before, it's a matter of other aspects as well. So from a technical point of view, you might have the need to bundle those technologies together, and there we can provide and help as well by, for example, controlling a Wi-Fi transceiver from the cellular module or stuff like that, or having the GNSS functionality embedded, the engine embedded in the host processor inside the modem. But then it's a matter of supply chain. Again, it's a matter of support. Again, it's a matter of device management. And so, yeah, it's easier, but we have the solutions that are pre-cooked by us if necessary to help even further the adoption of those technologies.
Perfect.
And maybe to touch one topic is global certification. With Wi-Fi, you just do Wi-Fi certification, if at all. GNSS, nothing to be done, your internal testing. With the cellular, you really do the global certification. And I think in terms of investment of having a global certification team with multiple carriers and expensive test equipment in-house by itself. And I think this might be with regards to technology. I want to maybe touch one topic you mentioned before, Fred, and it's a time to market and how to build a business case in the IoT space. When we do, many of our customers will build a business plan and project plan, and they will show millions and tens of millions of devices. And for them, cost is obviously important. But when they start the project, the first million devices, if they are sensitive to a few dollars on the cost of those first devices, something is really wrong with their business case. It's always better to have some margin on the business case, be much quicker, much faster with time to market, take much less risk with your first device. And after you deploy a few million of devices, you have way more experience. You know much better what your customer needs. I'm thinking of a device maker. And I think then it would be maybe a good point to consider if you want to switch from module to keep on board. But really at that point in time, you have much better knowledge of the market and the technology. And it's a better time in space, better time point to make this kind of decision.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, I want to say that I think we covered the topic in pretty great detail. I really look forward to everyone showing up in Nuremberg, and there will be thousands of embedded designers there. So I'm sure if they have any follow-up questions, we'll make sure we see them there, if not online in the interim. I think I want to say thank you on behalf of the audience. Thank you on behalf of IMC. And it's really, really good to see that, this small element of the ecosystem, from silicon and chip suppliers to, higher value module suppliers, really working together, because the end customer and success in the market is really what's important. And, optimizing everybody's resources and time and making sure that we provide the best level of support for the clients who are adopting IoT and our 28,000 members who are buyers of IoT. This is a very, very valuable and productive session. So I really want to thank you both. Thank you again.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Once again.